So welcome to Talking Business, and today we'll be looking at the power sector. Earlier in this month, a drama unfolded between investors in DISCOs, that is Distribution Companies of Nigeria, and the Minister of Power. Now, usually they were expected to send their spokesman to a meeting, but the investors chose to speak up for themselves, and they said that they are willing to resell the funds at a discounted price to anyone who is interested. That's striking, because a situation where an investor will tell you he's willing to sell off his business at a discounted price tells you all is not well in the business. They have been coming under fire, talking about the DISCOs, under fire from consumers who have decried poor power supply as distributed by the companies, and then the Minister of Power has asked that they raise up their game. But they came out to say that they are doing the best they can, but they're willing to resell their funds to interested buyers. Now I have with me the head of Corporate Affairs, BEDC, the person of Mr. Adekunle Tayo. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Okay. So first we want to know what is up with the business of power distribution in Nigeria. On the other hand, government has said it is not afraid of the DISCO's threat. But before we get to government issues, let's know what's happening in the business of power distribution. So I'll start by asking, how is business?
Well, we thank God. Business could be better. Presently, we are confronted by challenges.
Okay.
We are trudging on in spite of that, and we are hopeful and resilient that things will definitely pick up. The future, will be better.
Okay. So it's just like any normal business where you have challenges, but you're hoping for the best.
Yes, because basically as private sector players, there's an expectation that when you invest in a particular entity, in a particular activity, first and foremost, the first level is to recover the cost. Then the next level is to start making profit from such venture. We recall that the private sector operators had to be called in by way of privatization of the power sector for them to run the power sector based on the investment outlay and the capacity of that sector to transform and turn things around. And that was necessitated the privatization of the immediate past government, which brought in new investors. And as we have, the power sector is now delineated into a value chain which comprises of three major components.
Okay.
The first arm is the generation arm, which is made up of about 25 generation companies.
Okay.
The second one is the transmission leg, which transports whatever electricity that is generated to the national grid.
Okay.
And from there, the distribution companies, also known as DISCOs, now pick the load and then distribute the power to the end users, the customers, the consumers across the country. For instance, at BEDC, we are in charge of 4 states. We are in charge of Edo State, we are in charge of Delta State, we are in charge of Ondo and Ekiti States.
Okay.
And the mandate is to distribute power, safe, reliable power to the customers in this area. However, the structure of the system and some of the emerging trends or issues nearly 5 years after privatization has actually led to a situation whereby the investors are getting a bit frustrated. And that's why you see the incessant breakbacks between, or verbal exchanges between the Honorable Minister of Power Works and Housing and the DISCOs. The DISCOs are at the receiving end of all this tirage because they are the last mile of the power sector value chain. They are the one that interface more, even with customers. The average customer across the country does not know who is Genco, does not know who is Transmission Company of Nigeria.
Sure.
As far as they are concerned, the electricity bills are paid to discos, and the discos are the face of the power sector.
Okay.
However, customers must know that whatever revenue collection made by the discos is shared among the value chain. And the discos only retain a fraction of those collections for the maintenance of the network and to embark on capital expenditure projects like issue of metering, procurement of transformers, network upgrade, distribution, expansion, etc., etc. But because the structure of the value chain does not actually make things work for the investors who are business-like, that's why we have a case of rising frustration, which is the reality on ground. And the problems are numerous. Let's start with the issue of infrastructure.
Okay.
The infrastructure that we have in place, the electricity infrastructure in Nigeria, they are aging. They are old. They are the same infrastructure that has been put in place for well over 50 years. That is even before independence. There has not been any major infrastructure upgrade or expansion on the part of the federal government. And these are the infrastructure that is being used to send electricity through the value chain to the end users. So what we have, discos sell electricity as a product. But when you have an aging infrastructure, the outcome of that is that you have a lot of grid, which is the TCN grid, disruption and instability.
Okay.
So
Let me
they say that
ask
the
you,
product,
sorry
yes.
to cut you there, whose job is it to upgrade the infrastructure?
The infrastructure, like I said, is the value chain.
Okay.
From the transmission end, it belongs to government. And the electricity is transported
Okay.
by the Transmission Company of Nigeria to the distribution end. So it is the job of federal government to do that.
Okay.
And to a large extent, the GENCOs, we have one or two that are owned by government. The majority are privately owned. So that's one major challenge. This year in 2018, even at BEDC, we took account of the disruptions and the outages due to what we call system breakdown, system collapse that we have had across the country. It's numbering 2,000 just between now, January and now, for us at Benin Disco. And customers are dissatisfied. When the light goes on and off, it trips off. Not to the fault of the discos, but because from the transmission end there are issues. The infrastructure is old and needs to be replaced. That's one. And then number two, as a country, what we are generating in terms of power is a drop in the evolution of our needs. The rule of thumb says that for every 1 million population, there must be 1,000 megawatts of electricity generated to serve such customers. That is the rule of thumb, and that's the standard practice all over the world. That's why you have in developed economies like UK, Germany, USA, that they have excess generation that is conversely related to the amount of their population. Now in Nigeria, with a population of nearly 200 million, what we still generate today, even with the so-called political increase that we have, like say 7,000, is still a drop in our ocean of our ocean of need. Today, as we speak, the national generation given to discos throughout the country is 4,257.04 megawatts, out of which BEDC, which services for states, only got 384.08 megawatts. Now you can imagine how do we begin to share that.
That's even less than 500.
That's less than 500 megawatts. When a go alone to enjoy premium power supply, we need about 1,000 megawatts.
So it's a far cry.
It's a far cry. So when you don't have the product to sell, it becomes a problem. And what is the root of the problem is that we have a single source of power, which is the TCN grid.
Okay.
The sources of power that we even produce, they are still limited for now, in reality. Now, gas is the major raw material. We produce power, basically about 5% is through gas. The 15% is through hydro, water. That's why during the rain season we have more of hydro coming up because the water level is really high. However, this is not enough. We are talking about solar, we are talking about coal energy, we are talking about renewable energy, so that when we have a diversified power base, then there will be more sources of power, and invariably there will be more generation. Then, in addition to such problem, now the issue of metering is also a business challenge for the discos. When the discos came on board about 5 years ago, there's what we call legacy gap. The legacy gap in terms of metering was in excess of 4.1 million, nearly 5 million. Now they have an annual performance agreement to do about 2.1 million. That's what the 11 discos collectively. They've done about 88% of that. But the legacy gap is carried over. And by the time you do what we call enumeration, which is the F count of customers within a particular location, you discover new customers.
Okay.
There are people that also want new connections. They want to be connected to the grid. So it is imperative for you to give them meter. Now, the metering issue has become a problem because discos are not able to meet up with that metering gap. In addition to that, we also have the issue of tariff. Tariff is the price paid for electricity. Now, tariff is supposed to be reviewed in line with the economic reality on ground.
Okay.
Issues of inflation rate, issue of exchange rate, and the interest rate on loans of that are some of the criteria which dictate the fact that tariff, which is the price for electricity, have to be reviewed. Now, since this discourse came on board, we have only had one review, which was February 2016. And it is in that tariff that the price which the investment discourse are expected to make supposed to come from. The revenue you are going to collect is based on the tariff. In fact, there's even a dilemma. That is why the liquidity crisis in the industry, which amounts about 1.3 trillion naira, is making disco investors to be frustrated. So the liquidity crisis. The dilemma is that now the tariff has not been reviewed.
Okay.
Yet we are supposed to do a lot of things. We are supposed to buy transformers. We are supposed to buy meters. We are supposed to do network expansion, network upgrade. Now, when the tariff is not going up, the other dilemma I said is that the price of electricity from the generating end is 18 naira per kilowatt of electricity.
Okay.
And discos are not allowed to sell more than 30 naira per kilowatt of electricity. That's a gap.
Okay, let's do the math here. The price at which discos receive electricity is 80 naira. Okay.
They are not allowed to sell more than 30 naira per kilowatt.
So who makes up for the 50 naira?
That's the gap, that's the dilemma. That's the frustration. In fact, that's the canal of the so-called business challenges that discos are facing.
Okay.
It is the liquidity crisis arising as a result of that gap, because there's nobody to fund that gap.
Okay.
However, in other clients where the privatization exercise like this has occurred, like in India, what government does is to subsidize.
Okay.
Apart from Allah, because government is saying yes, it has the right to protect the citizenry in line with the economic recession, that we can't just allow or approve tariff to go up, because it will be difficult for the populace to afford. Don't forget, we are even nearing an election year, and the ruling government will try all possible best to assuage the masses so that it can come for second term. But that is antithesis.
Okay, now let's get back to the basis, the beginning of this whole issue, at the point where privatization was done. Now, how was it done? Were these issues not tabled before DVC or other discos took over from PHCN?
Now, during the privatization exercise, it was midwife by what we call the Bureau of Public Enterprise,
okay.
BPE. That's the agency that was responsible for privatization. And privatization was domiciled under the ambit of the presidency. Okay. The vice president's office actually has control over privatization. A lot of researches, a lot of discussions were done along that line. But during the exercise, there are what we call key performance indices, key performance expectations.
Okay.
On the part of the discourse, which government handed out. On the other side, there were also expectations that do 1, 2, 3 in exchange for ABC.
Okay.
So it's like a situation whereby we now have government insisting that DISCOs should meet up to their own performance agreement end without creating the enabling environment to make like I'm talking about the issue of tariff.
Okay.
If the tariff has been what we call cost reflective tariff, I just told you about the dilemma, the block, the lacuna in the price at which electricity is taken from the national grid, which is 20 naira, and the price at which it's sold is not cost effective. So we are, is at a loss.
Okay.
So and any investor, even if you are not making profit, because the assumption is that yes, it's a long-term investment.
Okay.
You don't expect to make profit immediately, but you can still begin to recover costs. During that exercise, government allowed the investors in the DISCOs on the power sector to take bank loans.
Okay.
And these loans are interest rates. They allow equity up to 30%. The remaining 70%, they say you can take bank loans. Those loans are being serviced. When you're not even recovering costs, how do you expect the investors to even meet up, even with their banking obligations, talk less of returning return on such investment to the owners, the people who put it? Most of these DISCOs took bank loans. They took bank loans, and because of the liquidity crisis, they are not able to service the loans. Their accounts are in red, even including the EDC. The board meetings that have been held, there was nothing in terms of recovering costs or anything. It is just hope on the future that things will get better.
Things will get better.
That's the basis for the frustration of the DISCO, and that was why the reality on ground got them frustrated to the extent of saying that,
and they had to cry out.
They had to cry out. They had to cry out. In the same vein, if you look at it critically, yes, government has a point in that, look, this service you are delivering, we are not yet there.
Okay. People
are not still feeling the impact of some of these things that we are expected to do. So it's, a situation like that. Government is on the path, let's say on the people, but it's supposed to put in some cushion to make both parties work. Because government knows that it hasn't got any business being in business. That was why it conceded, it allowed the private investors to come to introduce equity, capital, to inject capital into this structure. We've never had the structure like this before.
Okay.
It's always been run by government as a parastatal, as a suspension, appendage of the Federal Ministry of Power. That's how electricity has been run. The defunct PACN, NEPA, and even ECN has been an appendage like a parastatal. And during that time, the agency does not pay for powers of national grid because it's government to government. Okay. But now that it's business, they get an invoice, buying and selling. We receive invoice as DISCOs at the end of the month.
Okay.
In fact, the invoices are sometimes 2 billion, sometimes 3 billion. For 9% allocation that BEDC gets from national grid, we get invoice every month from NDED, Nigerian Bulk Electricity Trading Company, that was set up by government to make the business and work. But you are not allowed to sell it. It's just like somebody producing a beer. You have a brewery, which represents the generation company. You also have a truck, which is the transmission company that transports the beer from the brewery. Now, they now get it to the club. The retailers, the distributors of those beer are the DISCOs.
Okay.
That's how the power value chain is. Whatever activity that happens at the brewery or at the transportation, if the transportation in the level chain breaks down, it affects the distributor. Then it affects the consumer. Is going to sit down at the club, at the beer parlor, to have a drink.
Okay.
So that is just the best analogy to illustrate the power sector. So we are the receiver because we are the collection agents for the entire industry. And this money that is collected, like I said, is distributed. It's used to pay for electricity so that we can have supply again.
Okay.
So we are saying that government should put the enabling environment in place to make the model work, to make the value chain work very well. I mean, for us to be able to deliver on the mandate. For instance, the issue of the tariff now. It has not been, except for the one or two. And
that seems to be one major issue.
It's a major issue because that's where the funding gap is. Everything we are going to do is predicated on the tariff. The money that is paid for electricity, metering, transformer, network upgrade, expansion, infrastructure, pole and everything is built into that tariff. And when the tariff is non-cost reflective, it becomes a problem. It's the major lacuna. In fact, it has caused a liquidity crisis of over 1.3 trillion naira for the entire power sector. And that's why distributors, are crying out that it has even made a mess of the business, and we got to a stage that we say, okay, if you want to even sell. Because if you enter It's like a small anecdote. You throw a pebble at an orange tree. Two things you expect. It's either an orange comes down or the pebble comes down. Now we are not seeing both the pebble and the orange.
Okay, so where is it? Okay, you've enumerated the challenges that these schools are faced with. You started with infrastructure, which is not really...
it's
aging, it's old, so it's not able to deliver...
Yes, even the little generated. We have a lot of wastage.
Okay.
There is even another one, which also this goes at this issue of energy theft. For instance, in Edo State, between 30 to 50% of energy that BEDC, which is the disco that services this franchise area, distributes, between 30 to 50% is stolen through illegal connections and bypass. So that again, there is a lot of revenue losses.
So how are you dealing with that?
Well, what we are doing along that side, first, we have put in place a few measures. In terms of metering, we have recertified the meters that we have. We also have boundary meters. Then we have also put in a process whereby even right from the place where you give light, you distribute light from the feeder pillars, from the junction stations to the boundary meters to the feeder pillars, then from to the transformers. They are all metered. We put meters there. Then we also did the survey of the network. We went around. We discovered that there are some meters that are out of date. Because the meter that is 20 years and above cannot be seen to effectively measure the amount of electricity supplied to a particular location. So we also did that. We said some of them will have to be replaced, some will have to be recertified. Then we also do spot check. We also have an enforcement that goes around the network. And if they discover illegal connections, we do a lot of enumeration. People that are not connected to the network, we put in a process to encourage them to do so. And beyond all that, we also expect collaboration from, state judiciary arms, especially at the state level, so that when we have mobile courts, prosecuting offenders, name and shame, not something that maybe put them in marketplace, name and shame, give them summary trial, maybe 3 months, 6 months, or we also impose fines. For instance, in our network, when we see people who are bypassed, when we go there to check your meters and we discover that you are bypassed, because in the way the bypass operates is that you don't allow the electricity being supplied to enter the meter so that it will not read. That is bypass. Illegal connection is people that are not registered in our books, that have not approached us for direct connection, now connecting illegally, stealing power. When we discover that, we disconnect. So when such people come, we ask them to pay fines, loss of revenue, and we now try to connect them legally. So, when you have stolen energy, and that's why we also mass campaign for people to dissuade people from engaging in energy theft, because whatever energy that is stolen, for the people paying, they are actually at the receiver, because you are paying for the person who is doing the wrong thing.
Now, coming back to the tariff issue, on the side of the consumer, they may argue that they're not getting enough power as they should. If the tariff is being raised, do you think the customers will be reluctant to pay? And maybe that's what the government is considering by not giving approval for you to increase tariff. And if that is done, what's the guarantee that it will not be increased at a level that is not commensurable with what the customers are getting?
Well, like we said, there was a performance agreement between government and the investors at the onset. On the part of the investors, they are expected to do A, B, C, D, which is their own deliverables. On the part of government, it's supposed to do 1, 2, 3 to make those performance agreements on the part of the investors work. If you now want us to, what is good for the geese is good for the gander. However, the way out typically for such dilemma is that the country which we are adopting its own model of privatization. In India, the government, there is subsidy. Yes, people might complain that yes, if you increase tariff, the average the common person. But in other places, they also subsidize, especially for low income earners. Government should be able to subsidize. If government does that, and through other policies. Let me mention one policy, for instance, the issue of eligibility. There's what we call customer eligibility, which means that customers in a cluster, industrial customers or very big customers who require between 2,000 megawatts of electricity and above can come together, and instead of procuring power from the discos, can go directly to the GENCOs and pay to them. It's a policy somersault. It's a disincentive to the discos. Why? Because yes, government has the right to issue policy that feels it will create a level playing field. However, you must also not injure the people that are on that line. It means you are doing cherry picking. Consequence upon that policy. Cherry picking means the premium customers which the discos have, which actually account for a larger part of their revenue.
Okay, so that would leave the discos with a limited number.
Maybe residential customers who in most cases are not able to pay.
Okay.
For instance, the issue of metering has affected revenue collection, because when you have meter, there's assurance in terms of revenue collection. The propensity to pay is higher when you know your consumption is being measured correctly, accurately.
So there's no fear of it being estimated.
Exactly, you pay. The propensity for the customer is to pay is higher when there's meter. But when it is not there, when they give estimated billing, studies have shown that because of that dispute, you don't have revenue assurance along that line.
Okay.
And however, there are also two sides to the so-called issue of estimated billing, which is a contentious issue among consumers. There's underbilling, there's overbilling.
Okay.
Most people focus on overbilling. In the same way, there are people that are also underbilled. But nobody talks. They all work quietly with whatever they are enjoying. So we are saying when we with MAP now, the issue of overbilling, the issue of estimated billing will be sorted out, because MAP is supposed to bridge the gap, accelerate quick metering. And once there's no metering gap again, there's no need for estimated billing.
Okay. Now finally, I want to ask you, the business of power distribution, ordinarily, is it a lucrative one? Not in Nigeria, but in other clients.
From the long-term perspective, it's something that is viable. I don't want to use the word lucrative. It's something that is viable, that is okay. But from the long-term perspective, given the right policy mix and the willpower on the part of the operators, given the right policy mix, it's an area that is very, very viable.
Over the long term.
Over a long term. We are not talking about even 10 years.
A
long term, 20 years and above and all that. Because by the time the variables involved, are mixed properly in such a manner that the right policy is done in terms of tariff, and you don't have, there are a lot of legislations too that will also help. For instance, the issue of energy theft. And you have, counterbalance out of policy measure. For instance, the issue of metering again, the other dilemma that this course also face is that there's a restriction in terms of what we call capital expenditure. That is what a disco can spend on capital expenses, like procurement of transformers, like pole, expansion of the network, network upgrade, injection substations, construction and all that also includes metering. So when you have an annual restriction, for instance, at Benin Disco, what it will take us to do metering alone is over 20 billion. And now the capex allowed us is no more than maybe 21, 22, which is also allowed transformers, which also allows construction of injection substations, which also allows so many other things.
In a nutshell, what would you say the discos need to make power distribution and business good for the investors?
Well, the discos will
Is it just government to keep their own side of the bargain, or there are other issues?
Yes, government should keep their own side of the bargain, one, but more importantly, if there's a kind of refurbishment of the electricity infrastructure, it will help a lot, because if you can carry more load, it means you're able to collect more money. That's basic. Then two, if you can also diversify, discos are doing it, not single source dependency.
Okay.
You don't depend really on the TCN grid. You have some mini grid initiatives and some other projects where you can pay. But more importantly, the issue of tariff.
Okay.
Government must let us have what you call a cost reflective tariff. Because in that tariff, a lot of things are inbuilt.
Okay.
You know, the issue of metering, residuals in the tariff, network expansion and all that. So if government can allow a cost reflective tariff, then legislation, government should also look at legislation. You don't do one policy to favor one area to the detriment of the other, of leaving gaps as a result of such policy. So if by and large it don't have to be done, the investors will be able to deliver on the mandate and even make things work. Because as we have now, we are not generating enough.
Okay.
There's a huge market potential. So many people are not.
We don't have enough to sell.
Yes.
Okay.
The market is not even. We are not even servicing the market enough. Given our population, there's even the rural electricity area, which government is even focusing money on.
Okay.
We are saying the people even in other centers are not getting enough.
Okay.
Empower the discos. Let there be a cost reflective tariff, and concomitantly, they can do the real investment. The on the other side, government will also do like the subsidy.
Okay.
So that for people that are unable to pay, the low-income earners, based on the data in the
subsidized power.
Yes, subsidized power for the low-income people. No, we are not saying it for the discos, but it's for the consumers.
All right, I've been talking with Adikule Tayo, who is the head corporate affairs of the BEDC. Okay, we'll take a break, and when we return, I will return with Professor Tony Ijewere. We're still looking at the power sector. Don't go away.